Hey everybody, welcome to Tim's Final Confessions. I'm Tim Derling. We're back with another edition of the Night Ranger Deep Dive, and this time I've got another special guest with me. He is the host of Tony Dio's Metal Emporium. It's Tony Dio. How you doing, man?
Good, Tim. Good. Thanks for having me.
And Tony, of course, is one of many panelists who appear in Sing Me Away, Night Ranger album review. And I wanted Tony to sit in with me on this particular episode. We're talking about 1998's album, Seven. Not Seven Wishes, just Seven, which when I was trying to find this album on cassette on eBay, it was the most frustrating thing because you type in Night Ranger 7 and pretty much all you see copies of Seven Wishes.
Hmm.
But
Yep.
we won't dwell on it too much, but it's actually their eighth album, but we won't dwell on that too much. Now, I think we're going to find this one big difference between Tony and I when it came to when this album came out. I stumbled upon it in a record store having no idea that it was coming out, but Tony's story, I'm guessing, is something different because Tony was working in the industry back then. You want to talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I hadn't started working there yet. I was actually just writing for a zine, and I
Oh,
had
okay.
friends that worked. I eventually worked with Sanctuary, but when they were CMC, I had friends that worked at CMC International because I live in North Carolina, and their offices are in Raleigh, and that's
Okay.
where CMC's main office was. So I was writing for a zine called Phase Three at the time, and they would send me stuff to review. And so I reviewed the album. And so I had an advance of it, but actually before it even came out.
And actually, that review is we printed that in the seven chapters, so you can see what Tony thought of that album in 1998, and we're going to find out what he thinks about it now. I just want to show off the cover, of course. This is not an original, of course. This is the Night of the Vinyl. Is it Night of the Vinyl Dead? Yeah, Night of the Vinyl
Yeah,
Dead reissue. This one's 229 of 500. Um, yeah, they do pretty good job on these.
they do nice stuff. They really
Yeah,
do. Yeah.
I got some Y&T ones. This one actually comes with a pretty nice cardboard sleeve, and then the record itself, it looks like this. Now, usually they try to make it look like one of the band's previous labels, so I would have thought they would have put the rainbow on it, like the MCA label or whatever, but they
Hmm.
didn't. But there is one thing I'm kind of surprised they didn't do because, as we'll get into, there was a bonus track on some versions of the Seven album, and sometimes they put those bonus tracks in those vinyl reissues. They didn't do that here. But so yeah, I mean Neverland came out in 1997. It was on Sony. I bought it. I was excited about it. Unfortunately, it didn't catch on. It was a really, really hard time for bands like Night Ranger from the 70s and 80s. In that time period when grunge and alternative were, new metal was just beginning, and yeah, a band like Night Ranger just fell between the cracks, unfortunately. So they ended up they weren't on Sony anymore. They were on, and as Tony talked about, CMC, which CMC started up. I think I first became aware of them sometime in like '93. Metal
Hmm.
Edge magazine would feature a lot of CMC product, and what they ended up doing is actually quite a good service they provided for a lot of '70s '80s bands. They would sign up a lot of bands. They were signing Warrant and Slaughter, and bands that didn't have major label deals, and they signed Leonard Skinner, and they started signing older bands too. And so this is the one and only time that they put a Night Ranger album out, and I didn't know it was coming out, but of course I bought it instantly. So you knew it was coming out because you got an advance copy of it and reviewed it. So what we're going to do is go through this um, track by track. So this, I do want to mention, is the last album to feature the original lineup. This was Fitz's last album with the band. And I think one of the issues, I don't hear a lot of Fitz on this album.
Yeah.
The keyboards are
He's
dialed way back.
yeah. Some of the string arrangements that are in some of the slower songs is probably his only contribution, really. Well, there's a couple of little pieces in there we can speak about. I made note of.
Yeah. So we'll start off with the first track, Sign of the Times. This is a pretty upbeat song. What are your thoughts on this one?
Thought it was a great opening track. It's high energy. They've got ripping solos from Brad and Jeff, like you want to hear. It kind of has a rockin' America type feel to it. But I really like it. I think it's a really good song, very strong.
Yeah. And this song, I think, continues. It was a vocal style that Jack started to do a little bit on Neverland, but the verses are kind of half sung, half talked. Like he kind
Hmm.
of, I like Rolling Stones records. He kind of talks like that, but it's melodic. It's just a little bit different. I like this one a lot.
Well, Tim, I was going to bring up that I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. But starting with Neverland, when they reunited, is something about the sound that changed. It doesn't sound like the classic Night Ranger records. It may have something to do with Jack's writing style changing when he worked with Tommy Shaw all those years in Damn
Yeah.
Yankees. Because a lot of the stuff kind of leans more in a Damn Yankees feel as far as the songwriting goes than it does for the 80s sounding Night
I
Ranger stuff.
I couldn't agree more, and that's talked about in the book extensively. I actually don't think that Night Ranger get back to kind of sounding like themselves until somewhere in California in 2011.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not just a matter, and it's there's an important lesson here. I think it's not just a matter of getting the five guys back in the studio again. There's more to it than that. Um, and a lot had changed. I mean, so 1988, Man in Motion comes out, and then Neverland comes out almost a decade later. This comes right on the heels of Neverland. And you're right, Jack had begun. I mean, he had a very very profitable. I don't want to say profitable, but a very lucrative writing partnership with Tommy. I mean, they ended up working with Aerosmith and Ozzy Osbourne, and I mean, they became an Alice Cooper. They became an in demand songwriting duo. I
Mm-hmm.
think that Jack's writing got a lot more acoustic based and a lot more. There's certain songs like I'll go back to Neverland for a second, and the song I like the song, but it's very different, called "My Elusive Mind." To me, that sounds more like a Tom Petty, like Traveling Wilburys
Mm-hmm.
type of thing, rather than a hard rock song. And the other thing about this album, even more so than Neverland, Fitz is on it, but the keyboards are dialed way back, and it was. But this wasn't unique to Night Ranger because there was a period where bands were almost embarrassed that they had a keyboard player. And I never really understood that. I mean, that was a key part of their sound. This is not like Whitesnake having the phantom keyboard player on stage.
Mm-hmm.
They had a dedicated, member of the band, a great songwriter, and a veteran musician in Alan Fitzgerald, and he's very underutilized here. Now that doesn't mean it's a bad album, but I agree it's different sounding. Night Ranger had to kind of find their way back to their original sound, and they and I think this was necessary to go through albums like this because it when they did, it didn't sound forced, it didn't sound contrived. It sounded like they said, you know what, let's just go back to what we used to do and what we were really good at. But I mean, there are some great songs on here. I actually, song for song, I actually prefer this to Neverland. Um, I think it's got more memorable songs on it. I think Neverland was quite good. And the thing that surprises me about this album is that usually by default a major label album is going to sound better, but I actually think the production on this album sounds better. I mean, they had Ron Nevison produce Neverland. It's nothing wrong with it. This one was produced by. Hang on, let me get the book out here. Um, I should know this right off the top of my head, but I don't.
Well, I don't have a physical copy of it anymore. So, luckily you sent me the files to check out. So and I got to thank you because I have listened to it quite a few
Oh
times
yeah,
now,
it's worth seeking out. I
and
got
it's
to.
and it's a really good record. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, I've got to go find a physical copy of it now
The
somewhere.
advantage you have, Tony, is that you have the option. I would say get the Japanese copy
Yeah.
because it's got that extra song on it. This was produced by Noel Golden, Jack Blades, and Kelly Kagi. Noel Golden is a name I've seen, but not a lot. But I think it's a good sounding album. But also, I mean, I think a lot of this was these albums have been, they recorded at Jack's barn, you know, and they know what they're doing. They So let's get into some more of the songs. The next two are kind of together. I mean, you got an instrumental Jane's Interlude. that goes into Panic and Jane. What do you think of this song?
Well, I don't know why they separated the interlude. It's so short they should have just made it part of the song,
Yeah.
because that screws up your track listing when you when you're playing
Well,
it, you
you
know.
look, I thought there were 10
But
songs on this. Why are there 11 tracks listed? Yeah.
yeah. So Panic and Jane, at first I wasn't really crazy about the vocal delivery in that one on the verses. The chorus is really, really good, and the bridge section and the guitar solos really saved this one for me. But both of those parts are really, really good. Some parts of it, like I just said earlier, some parts sound like Damn Yankees. I mean, this could have been
Mm,
something left over that maybe Jack had been working on with the Damn Yankees.
yep. Yeah, a lot of these songs, it's really it doesn't take a stretch of the imagination to wonder how many of these songs would have formed a basis for a third Damn Yankees album had they put one out in 94, 95. Of course, we know what happened is that Tommy and Jack put out the Shaw Blades album Hallucination, which is very acoustic based. So I really think Jack was a lot still in that mindset a lot. But yeah, some of these songs you can almost, if you use, it doesn't take much imagination. You can hear Tommy Shaw singing harmonies on them. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. Um, so next up is the first ballad on here. Don't ask me why. This is one, as you mentioned, that's got some string arrangements on it. What do you think of this one?
Well, it's very Beatlesque. You know, it's
It is.
and
Yep.
like I said, you can hear fits in the string arrangements, in the interlude segues and so forth. But it's got a very hooky chorus, great guitar solo as usual. But not only in this period, 1998, grunge was kind of had already peaked and was
Yeah.
kind of coming down, and there was this right around that time, there was this whole 60s revival thing. You had a lot of
Yep.
bands coming out that had this kind of flower power hippie thing going on.
Yep.
Lenny Kravitz is a good
Mm-hmm.
example. He came
Yep.
out and his fashion and everything. And I kind of felt like that's kind of what they were going for with this song. I know those guys are huge Beatles fans too, so
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, it's a great ballad. I mean, it really is. If it had came out in 1987, it probably would have been a big hit for him.
Yeah, but it's not your typical Night Ranger ballad. It's not really a power ballad. It's sort of a quieter type of song. And
Mm-hmm.
really, I mean, if this had had the major label push, there's no reason why this couldn't have gotten some play even on adult contemporary radio. Because if you think about it, another thing that was happening around that time, you had bands like Train that were coming out and Matchbox
Exactly.
20 and
Mm-hmm.
there's another one that's right in the tip of my tongue, but they were
Yeah, there were a bunch
pop
of them. Yeah.
pop rock band sort of thing, but they were scoring big. Goo Goo Dolls, that's who I was trying to think of. Even
Mm-hmm.
though they started most more of a punk band, but yeah, songs like that, this could have fit right in if it had given why is it that Aerosmith were still able to score hits around this time? We'll get to Aerosmith very soon, but anyway, actually, yeah, we're gonna get to Aerosmith right now with the song Kong, which sounds to me like it could have been on like Get a Grip or Nine Lives, and you have an inside scoop on this song and why you didn't think it should have been a single. So,
Yeah, I remember when my friend Mark that worked at CMC, he sent me the CD to review, and he also said, "Hey, listen to that and try to help me pick out a single. We're trying to figure out a single for the album." So I listened to it, and I don't recall what I came back to him and said as far as a single, but I remember Kong was one of my least favorites on the list, and he goes, "Oh, they've decided they're going to go with Kong," and I'm like, "Why?" And he said, "Well, they think it sounds like Aerosmith." And I was like, well, you got that, you've got these little jungle rhythms and congas and this wind instrument being played. The only Aerosmith thing I really hear myself is it's kind of got that swagger, like Living on the Edge, or
yeah,
Ragdoll is another good one that kind of has that swagger. And I mean, it's definitely some influence there, but I just didn't think it was a good enough song for a single. It's not. It's a good filler track, but I don't see the standout point of it that makes it,
and it doesn't
a
sound like
hit
Night
potential.
Ranger. Doesn't
And
sound
no, it
anything
doesn't.
like
No.
Night Ranger. It's got that, but yeah, you're right. It has that swagger, and I mean, of course, as we said, Jack and Tommy co-wrote. Um, I think Shut Up and Dance on Get a Grip, and they also co-wrote Walk on Water. And this, it wouldn't have surprised me if this was a song that they'd submitted, because I mean at the time Aerosmith were there was a gap. There was a 4 year gap between Get a Grip and Nine Lives, and there was all kinds of stuff going on, and they probably, I think they almost broke up, but they may have been looking for songs, but apparently they didn't go for this one. And yeah, this would not have been my choice for a second or third single. Never mind the first single, other than unless they were going for kind of a novelty thing. Uh, that's interesting though, that it's funny. I've heard stories like that from people said, I tried, man. I tried to tell them, but no, they didn't listen.
Oh yeah, I've heard stories before from bands when they're like, yeah, we really were pushing for this for a single, but the record label didn't want to do that. They wanted this other song. And
Yeah.
you see so many albums tank because of that,
Yeah. Bad, especially the first single. That's your best shot at anything.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, especially up here in Canada, I don't ever remember hearing or seeing any of these CMC albums or tracks from, if I had them, it's because I was actively seeking them out. And the trouble is because they um, weren't a major label. If you did see them in Canada, they were like twice the price because of
Right.
import stuff, right? So it was rough.
Well,
It was a
they were distributed by BMG.
Yeah, but I don't think they were distributed by BMG in Canada. If I could be
Uh,
wrong about that, and usually whatever a label does in the States is the same as in Canada, but not always. But yeah, it was hard. It was hard supporting these groups because it was hard enough finding the actual albums. The advantage that I had is that I live pretty close to the border, so I could skip over once in a while and shop. But next up is so I would say Kong is an interesting song, and I use interesting as not necessarily a compliment. The next song I'm going to call interesting, but I do mean it as a compliment. Mother Mayhem. I described this in the book. It sounds to me like an unplugged version of a song that was never recorded electrically. This sounds like an unplugged song to me. What do you think
yeah.
about this one?
To me, the first thing that popped in my head was MTV Unplugged.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of Alice in Chains on MTV Unplugged. The song reminds me a lot of No
Yep.
Excuses,
Yeah. A
and
few
I think
people, a
that's
few
really what.
people, yeah, a few people picked up on that, and I can hear it. Yeah, it's got that just that acoustic, the harmonies. Yeah, it's not quite as
Yeah,
dark, but then again, no excuses. Is
Kelly's playing. Yeah, Kelly's
yeah,
playing
some
congas.
some
Yeah, I mean it's
percussion. Yeah,
just like an MTV Unplugged. Yeah,
I
yeah.
like it. I like it. I like the lyrics. Hanging
Mm-hmm.
around down by Slag Town, say goodbye. Like Jack manages to make them singable and catchy. I like
Mm-hmm.
this one. Like this could have been a single. I mean, they could have put this one out, and people would have been like, "Oh, I like that," not having any idea who it was. You
Yeah,
know?
that would have been good. There was those stories about where during the '90s, a lot of times they would release singles by a band and not say who it was, just to see if people would pick up on it. Because
Yeah,
one I remember was Donny Osmond released a single that was
yeah.
I think it was "Soldier of Love" or
Soldier of Love. Yeah,
something,
that was a big
and
comeback song for him.
it was a big hit, and they didn't tell people who it was, and that's
Right.
why it
Yeah.
took off.
Yeah, and there
Yeah.
was a stigma. Yeah, any band, any artist that had a stigma to their name. A good example. I saw an interview with Derek Schulman, who I mean he was a Gentle Giant, but he was also an A&R guy for Mercury, and he
Mm-hmm.
signed Bon Jovi, and he signed and subsequently signed Cinderella. And he said, once the grunge period hit, he played someone a bunch of demos that Tom Kiefer had done, and they said this whoever he played it for said this is great. Who is this? And he told him who it was. And, oh, and that always
Yeah.
aggravated me. It's like, what? Why? What you liked it a second ago? So there, yeah,
Yeah,
it was,
I've heard those demos.
yeah,
They sound like the Eagles or something. You
yeah.
know.
Probably not unlike a lot of the stuff that ended up on his couple of solo albums, but um,
Mm-hmm.
there was, it's. I've tried to explain it to younger people that didn't live through it like we did. I think there was a definite stigma. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it was like the disco backlash in the early '80s. I mean, it was real. You just, you almost didn't dare admit you liked anything that, you know. Anyway, next up is Soul Survivor. This is a really good. I don't know if we'd call it a ballad. It's definitely ballad-like, but this is a great song that Kelly Kagi sings. What are your thoughts on this one?
I thought it was a great track. It sounds more like classic Night Ranger than anything on this album to
Yeah,
me. It would have fit perfectly on Seven Wishes or Big Life. Um, the story and the lyrics is great. I love that story. It's got great hooks. It has a more simplified solo in it, guitar solo probably by Brad, but it fits. It just fits perfectly to the song.
yeah.
Very good
The
song.
the thing is, and you've hit upon something here. Kelly never changed his vocal style. He always sang the same. He always just had that great soulful voice, and he just, you know, whereas Jack would try different things, and he's definitely trying different things in this album. And I think that's then when Kelly sings a song, it kind of cements it more of like, by the way, you are listening to Night Ranger. And there nothing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying different things. It's just funny that Kelly's got that one voice, but it's a great voice, and you want to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
Next one is Sea of Love. I mean, so this isn't the first time they would do that. They take a very popular song title and write another song with it. Def Leppard eventually had a song called Sea of Love too. I like this one. It's I'm not crazy about again, I'm not crazy about Jack's vocals during the verses, but I do like the chorus a lot. One of the things I like about this song is the beginning where you hear them kind of talking back and forth. You're like, how does this one start? I like it when they throw in things like that.
Yeah, it's got that little transistor radio effect going
Yeah,
on,
like they're on the talk
Uh,
back and then they start
yeah,
playing. Yeah.
yeah. I thought it was a pretty cool song. It kicks in with a great kind of just chug chug riff, chuggy.
Yeah.
The lyrics are really clever on it. That I love that humming the tune you heard on VH3.
Yeah,
It's just
what do they mean by that exactly? I mean, that
he
could be
probably
a
didn't want to
number.
say new. Well, he probably didn't want to say VH1. He just said VH3.
But but this is the
But
same year that Van Halen 3 came out, the album with Gary Sharon. So
I didn't think
uh
about that. You're right, man. That
it's
you could be
'98, yeah. But I
yeah.
doubt
I
it.
didn't think
It's
about it.
probably more about VH1 and it's he just wanted to be different, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do like it. The chorus is everything, right? I mean, if the chorus
yeah.
doesn't
The
work,
course has
the
got a
song doesn't
great
work.
hook.
It's got a great chorus. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's something. It almost sounds like something you'd hear on some of the later albums, though. Some of the filler tracks on some of the later albums.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, Night Ranger filler is generally still quite good. It's just that when
Yeah,
the highs that they hit are generally so high that, it's hard to get every song to that level.
yeah.
So at this point, I think we're in the right spot. If you have the Japanese CD, there's another Kelly ballad called Crazy World, which, to be honest with you, I was only made aware of in the last few years. I didn't know that it existed. And I think it's pretty good. They probably didn't want another ballad on the album, but I think it's a pretty good song. Are you familiar with this one?
Oh yeah, I listened to it. You
Right.
sent that one to me as well.
Yeah.
I don't remember if I don't think that was on the original CD that I had, but it's a really really good ballad. These guys they really don't get credit for how good of songwriters they are.
They don't.
I mean, just as far as lyricists,
Yeah.
I really like just I mean the story paints it just paints a picture and you can just picture what he's singing about. I like the line, I'll treat you to dinner at the cafe with the checkerboard sign.
Yeah.
It's just
Very evocative.
it's so
Yeah.
yeah, so visual. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really good. It's a really good ballad. And then once again, this is something I feel like could have fit on something like Big Life.
Yeah. It absolutely could have. And again, Kelly just does so well at songs like this. Yeah, it's worth checking out, guys. If you're like me and you started off with the CMC version, it's worth getting that Japanese version, which I think was I don't know if it was on Victor or it was on Zero Corporation, but anyway, it's available. You can get it off Discogs, but it's worth
Yeah,
getting
it's
for that
very
extra song.
affordable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not going to set you back too much. But that's the interesting thing. Like sometimes when Night of the Vinyl Dead does these reissues, like when they reissued Y&T's Face Melter, I couldn't have been happier because as Y&T fans know, you had to buy three different CDs to get all the bonus tracks because they put up one bonus track on some territories and one on the other, and then
Hmm.
the vinyl reissue has them both. So I thought that
Yeah,
was,
that's
but
cool.
Next
Yeah.
up is my favorite song on the album, Peace Sign. This would have been my choice for a single. It doesn't necessarily sound like Night Ranger, but I just think it's a fun, upbeat song that people could latch onto right away. And yeah, I really dig this one.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tim. That would have been a great single. I think I remember saying, I think that was one of my picks before, because like I was saying earlier about this, the whole hippie '60s revival
Yeah,
thing. I think that it would have been really a cool song to put out as a single. I mean, could you imagine a music video for that?
they could have had a lot of
That
fun with it. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean the whole story, by him meeting this girl, her name is Feather, and she's comes
yeah,
from a hippie family, and all.
yeah.
It's a great story,
I love it. Yeah,
and
the kind of place the DEA would love to whack.
yeah,
Yeah, Jack's a great
yeah,
lyricist, and his lyrics are always a cut above because they're never your cliched. Anytime you hear a song like a Night Ranger song where the lyrics kind of sound like any great band could have written them, that's when I get the feeling that they're under the gun to get enough songs on an album. But most of the
yeah.
time, he tells great stories.
That song it was good enough that if I mean, say Night Ranger had still been hip at that time, it probably would have,
Yeah.
and if it'd been a single, it would have been a hit. But it could have been a hit for another band. I mean, like you had a lot of these cheap trick like bands that were coming out of that period too,
Mm.
like the band Lit, for
Oh
instance, is
yeah.
a good one.
Uh,
It's power pop rock,
yep.
power chords. I mean, Everclear was another one.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
That's a
that would
good
have been
choice.
something. That would have been a good song for a band like that
Yeah.
to do.
Or if somehow Night Ranger had managed to get a song like this on a soundtrack or a TV
Hmm.
show, you know. But yeah, this is always been my favorite. Super catchy. Next up is my favorite ballad on the album, "When I Call on You." This is what I like about this album is that when I call on you and don't ask me why, they're proof that Jack Blades can sing ballads. There's I know Kelly's best known because he sang Sister Christian and he sang Goodbye and Sentimental Street, but Jack can hold his own with ballads. I mean, I think he proved that with Damn Yankees. But yeah, this is I think a really really great song, which I think at another time could have been a hit.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned Damn Yankees, and my first thought listening through to it again was like, wow, this would have fit really good on the second Damn Yankees record, Don't Tread.
This could have, in my opinion, this could have saved that second Damn Yankees record because I don't,
Yes.
I think it's okay, but I don't think it's nearly as good as the first one.
Mm-mm.
The first one has
Mm-mm.
a magic about it.
Yeah, this is better than any of the ballads that's on the second
I
album.
agree with you because I always thought that Where You Going Now sounded like the label said, give us another high enough. And Silence is
Yeah.
Broken was just never a favorite of mine, but this one, yeah, and Damn Yankees were one of those bands. They were actually having hits when other bands of that era weren't. So, yeah,
Hmm.
it really could have been. And the sad thing is, we're only talking a few years removed at this point.
Sure.
Uh, and then we finish up with Revelation. This one's a little bit different, but there's something about the way Jack and Kelly sing together on the chorus that sounds very traditional Night Ranger to me.
Yeah, it's a really good song, solid song, got a great chorus. I like the little guitar hook. It kind of sounds like kind of like an ambulance, at the beginning
Yeah,
that I guess Brad's doing. Um, the solos is just it's the best solos on the album because you've got Brad and Jeff trading back and forth like they used to, and that was one of my favorite things about Night Ranger was
yeah.
the guitar dueling back and forth, and you get that on this track. And yeah, it's a good track. It's a good one to close with.
And so there you go, folks. That's Night Ranger's eighth album called Seven. A really good album, and surprisingly, well, maybe not surprisingly, because, like I said, the music business was so hostile towards bands that from the 70s and 80s that it was another 9 years before they put another album out. They toured a lot, but they didn't really hear much of them. And then, boy, that album's another story into itself. We'll get to that. But as for now, I think when I looking back, because one thing that I always do when I'm working on a book is I'll listen to an album like over and over and over again to make sure that I'm not just remembering something, you know, because sometimes I'll listen back to an album and go, yeah, I really like this album. You listen to it, you go, what did I like about this album? or vice versa. You think, yeah, I didn't really care for that album. I didn't listen to it much. Then you listen to it again. You're like, what was I thinking? This is really good. Seven is one that went up in my estimation. It was better than I remembered it. I remembered things like Peace Sign and Soul Survivor, but overall, I couldn't have hummed you the hooks of the songs all the way through. Now I can. I've listened to it enough, but um, yeah, Night Ranger 7. Check it out, folks. We're getting into that period. I mean, this is their first up other than Feeding Off the Mojo, but this is the first Night Ranger album that was not a major label, and this is the start of that more obscure period, which is why I really wanted to write a book that talked about all of the albums, not just the major label ones, because they're all worth checking out. Um, so Tony, I want to thank you for sitting in, and thanks for letting me use that review because that's a real um, slice of you know
That time period,
yeah,
you know.
fanzines, in a lot of ways, helped keep some of this music out there because mainstream media was not covering it. They unless you were like Metal Edge, you weren't getting written up in Rolling Stone or Spin. But then again, Night Ranger was never one of those bands anyway. Um, but yeah, so there you go, Night Ranger 7, worth checking out. I'll have the link to my book below to order, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and make sure you like and subscribe to Tony Dio's Metal
Tony
Emporium,
Tio's Metal Emporium.
Metal
Yep.
Emporium, and
Metal Emporium.
and yeah, check it out. Good stuff. And Tony, thanks for helping me with this deep dive.
You're truly welcome, man. Thanks a lot.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching Tim's Final Confessions. We'll see you around the bend for the next Night Ranger album, and what an album! Until then, go listen